You're not lazy, you're not broken, you've just been lied to. Waiting for motivation, it's a trap. Chasing comfort, that's how dreams die quietly. Every second you hesitate feeds regret, weakness, and stagnation. The truth, action creates motivation, not the other way around. Discipline isn't a skill, it's a weapon. If you've ever wondered how unstoppable people force themselves to move without feeling ready, without hesitation, you're about to learn the brutal, liberating formula. This isn't hype, it's survival. Move or be crushed. In a few moments, I'll teach you how to force yourself to take action. No motivation, no hesitation, just execution. The illusion of motivation. Motivation is the greatest lie ever sold. It's the drug that society feeds you to keep you stuck, waiting, hoping, fantasizing about change while doing absolutely nothing to create it. You've been conditioned to believe that successful people are somehow endlessly motivated, that they spring out of bed every morning, feeling fueled by an infinite well of inspiration. But that is a myth. A dangerous, deceptive myth designed to keep you weak. Because the harsh truth is this: waiting for motivation is the fastest way to guarantee that you never move. Look around. How many people do you know who say, "I'll start when I feel ready," or "I'm waiting for the right mood," or "I just need to get motivated first"? Where are they now? Still waiting, still stuck, still fantasizing while life passes them by. This is the trap, the illusion that motivation is a requirement for action. It's not, it never was. Motivation is a feeling, and like all feelings, it's unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather. If you anchor your life to it, you will be a prisoner of inconsistency forever. Here's the brutal reality most people don't want to hear. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't motivation. It's discipline. It's the ability to act regardless of how you feel. Discipline doesn't care about moods, about inspiration, about whether you're tired, stressed, bored, or unmotivated. Discipline simply says, "I don't care how you feel. Do it anyway." The disciplined person wakes up and takes action, not because they are always motivated, but because they understand that action isn't optional. It's mandatory. The truth that society avoids telling you is this: action creates motivation, not the other way around. Think about it. How many times have you forced yourself to go to the gym, work on a project, or tackle a task you didn't want to start, only to notice that within minutes of doing it, your energy shifted? You felt better, clearer, more driven? That's not a coincidence. That's the formula. Movement precedes motivation. You don't wait to feel like doing it. You start doing it, and then the feeling catches up. Successful people, those who dominate in business, in fitness, in life, they don't rely on fleeting bursts of motivation. They've trained themselves to act regardless. They know that waiting to feel like it is a child's game. They've burned the idea of motivation to the ground and replaced it with relentless execution. They don't ask themselves, "Do I feel like it today?" They ask what needs to be done, and then they do it. Period. If you want to reclaim your power, you must kill the illusion of motivation right now. Understandably, that motivation is not a prerequisite for action. It is a by-product of action. Discipline is what drags you out of bed when your mind screams for comfort. Discipline is what builds the body, the business, the life. Discipline doesn't negotiate, it commands. And when you stop waiting for motivation and start moving anyway, something incredible happens. The fog lifts, the momentum builds, and the person you always wanted to become, you start to become them. Not because you felt like it, but because you acted despite how you felt. That is where real power lives. The enemy, comfort. Comfort is the most seductive enemy you will ever face. It doesn't scream, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't come at you with warning signs. No comfort whispers, it lulls you. It seduces you with softness, ease, and the false promise of safety. And before you even realize what's happening, it has its claws deep in your mind. Comfort convinces you that slowing down is okay, that skipping today's work won't matter, that resting just a little longer is justified. It tells you that tomorrow is a better day to start, And while you sit, waiting, relaxing, easing into softness, it kills your dreams silently. What makes comfort so dangerous is that it disguises itself as self-care, as deserved rest, as being kind to yourself. But there's a difference between intentional recovery and lazy indulgence. Comfort doesn't care about that line. Beads on your desire for relief, and every time you choose comfort over growth, your mind rewires itself. Neurons strengthens that say, avoid effort, stay safe, stay still. Your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Your capacity for challenge decays. And what once was merely a skipped workout, a postponed goal, a delayed decision, slowly becomes your identity. You become someone who waits, someone who procrastinates, someone who lives their entire life in avoidance of discomfort. The brain is efficient. It adapts to whatever you repeatedly do. If you constantly choose comfort, it will reshape itself to make avoiding effort the default. Suddenly, even the smallest tasks feel overwhelming. The mountain grows taller. The climb feels steeper. What others handle with ease begins to feel impossible for you. Not because it is impossible, but because you've trained your mind to retreat at the first sign of resistance. Comfort becomes the cage you willingly built. And now you can't even imagine what life outside of it looks like. Seeking comfort is not harmless. Seeking comfort is seeking weakness. It's a declaration, silent but powerful, that you are choosing softness over strength, ease over growth, safety over greatness. And every day you make that choice, you step further away from the person you could be. You surrender potential for the illusion of peace. But it's a hollow peace, a temporary relief, that comes with a devastating long-term cost. Regret, because comfort now leads to pain later. Always. The people who dominate life, who win at every level, understand this truth better than anyone. Comfort is the enemy. They don't seek it. They don't crave it. They learn to despise it. Instead of asking, how can I make this easier? They ask, how can I make myself stronger? Where others avoid difficulty, they chase it. Because they understand that growth lives in discomfort, that strength is forged in resistance, that the life they want is on the other side of what's hard. You cannot build an extraordinary life on a foundation of comfort. Comfort breeds softness. Softness breeds weakness, and weakness guarantees a life of mediocrity. If you truly want change, you must rewire your mind to crave discomfort, to lean into the hard, to reject the easy path. Because comfort isn't just the killer of dreams, it's the executioner of potential, the pain of inaction. There is a kind of suffering that doesn't scream. It doesn't leave bruises or scars you can show to the world. It lingers quietly beneath the surface, creeping into your mind and the stillness of the night. It's the heaviness you feel when you know, deep down, that you are capable of more, but still refuse to move. This is the pain of inaction, the slow, suffocating agony of watching your potential rot while you do nothing about it. It is a weight that grows heavier with every missed opportunity, every delayed decision, every excuse you whisper to justify standing still. Most people think action is hard. They look at the effort, the discomfort, the sacrifice required, and convince themselves that moving forward is painful. But what they never fully understand until it's too late is that inaction hurts far more. It's a different kind of pain. It's quieter, more subtle, but infinitely more destructive. Because the pain of action is temporary, soreness, fatigue, a few moments of discomfort. But the pain of inaction, that's permanent. It festers, it lingers. It becomes regret. And regret has a way of haunting you long after the moment has passed. Nothing stings worse than looking back on months, years, even decades, and realizing that the only thing standing between you and the life you wanted was your refusal to act, not bad luck, not lack of opportunity, not some external force. Just you, choosing comfort, choosing hesitation, choosing fear. And as time passes, the gap between who you are and who you could have been grows wider. You begin to feel it like a phantom limb. The constant ache of potential wasted, of chances never taken. Regret isn't loud at first. It starts as a whisper, a quiet discomfort when you see someone else doing what you always wanted to do. A little sting when you watch someone living a life you told yourself was impossible. But that whisper grows. With every day you fail to act, it gets louder. It shows up as frustration, as anxiety, as depression, as restlessness that no distraction, no entertainment, no temporary pleasure can silence. Because deep down, your mind knows when you are betraying yourself. And it punishes you with the slow drip of regret. But there is another side to this pain. It can break you, or it can forge you. The very discomfort you feel from doing nothing can become the fuel that forces you. Discipline. To change. If you let it, the pain of inaction can become the most powerful catalyst for transformation. Because once you truly feel the cost of standing still, once you face the reality that time is passing and no one is coming to save you, you either drown in that realization, or you rise. You weaponize it. You let that pain remind you that the price of waiting is always higher than the price of doing. And when you finally decide to move, to act, to fight, you'll realize that nothing is more painful than a life wasted on hesitation. The discipline-first mentality. Discipline is the dividing line between those who merely dream and those who actually achieve. It's the brutal truth that most people refuse to accept because discipline isn't sexy. It isn't flashy. It doesn't rely on feel-good quotes or waiting for the perfect mood to strike. Discipline doesn't care about how you feel. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply demands one thing: action. Relentless, non-negotiable, consistent action. This is why discipline will always beat motivation. Because motivation is a visitor. It comes and goes as it pleases. But discipline is a permanent resident in the mind of anyone who wins. The world has sold you the lie that you must be inspired to move, that you should feel excited about the grind, that it should feel good. But winners don't wait to feel anything. They have killed that idea completely because they understand that feelings are irrelevant. If you only act when you feel like it, you lose. It's that simple. Discipline means you show up when you're tired. You show up when you're bored. You show up when every part of your mind is begging for rest, for distraction, for anything except the hard thing in front of you. And still, you do it anyway. The discipline don't operate on emotional weather patterns. They don't check in with themselves each morning to see whether they feel like executing. Their internal dialogue is not one of negotiation, but one of command. It doesn't matter how I feel, the work gets done. This is the discipline-first mentality. It's ruthless, it's unforgiving, but it's the only formula that works because life doesn't reward intention. It rewards execution. The reality is that discipline is freedom. People think discipline is restriction, that it's this rigid, miserable existence. They couldn't be more wrong. The undisciplined are the ones who suffer, trapped in cycles of procrastination, regret, and unfulfilled potential. The disciplined are free. Free from chaos, free from the mental torture of knowing they're capable of more, but doing less. Free because their life is built on self-respect, the deepest kind there is. When you live by discipline, you trust yourself. You know that no matter what, you will do what needs to be done. And here's the formula that the successful live by. Feelings are irrelevant. Action is mandatory. This is the law. This is the line in the sand. You no longer give your feelings a seat at the decision-making table. You no longer care whether you're inspired. You move. You execute, you act. Because the work demands it. Because your goal is demanded. Overthinking. Because the version of you that's buried underneath your excuses deserves to be pulled to the surface. Discipline isn't just about doing the work when it's hard. It's about doing it especially when it's hard. Because that's when it counts. That's when you separate yourself from the masses. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. The disciplined live in control of theirs, and in that control lies every victory you've ever wanted. Kill overthinking. Overthinking is the most sophisticated form of self-sabotage. It desires itself as intelligence, as caution, as preparation. It makes you feel like you're being productive when in reality you're drowning in mental quicksand. The mind whispers, "Let me just figure this out a bit more. I need to make sure it's the perfect time. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? And while you sit there tangled in your own thoughts, life keeps moving. Opportunities slip away, momentum dies, and you become a prisoner of your own mind. This is the brutal truth that few are willing to confront. Overthinking is not problem solving. It's procrastination dressed up as logic. Most people don't realize that overthinking is simply fear with better PR. It's fear pretending to be responsible, pretending to be strategic, but at its core, it's the mind's most effective trick to keep you paralyzed. It convinces you that more thinking leads to better results. But in reality, it leads to no results at all. It feeds you endless questions without answers. It creates imaginary problems, hypothetical disasters, and phantom obstacles that don't even exist yet, if they ever will. The more you think, the heavier everything feels. The task grows larger in your mind. The starting line drifts further away. And before you know it, you've talked yourself out of doing the very thing that would have changed your life. Momentum dies in hesitation. The longer you sit and thought, the harder it becomes to move. Action has a window. There's a critical moment right after the idea strikes when you have to move before the mind catches up and starts flooding you with doubt, excuses, and reasons to stay still. This is how the mind works. It prioritizes comfort and safety above all else. The moment you present it with something challenging, uncertain, or risky, it immediately begins constructing arguments against it. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I need to learn more. Maybe tomorrow would be better. It sounds rational, but it's a lie. A beautifully packaged lie that has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. The ones who win in life understand this mental game. They know the rule: act before your brain talks you out of it. The thought comes, the idea sparks, the impulse hits, and they move immediately. No overthinking. No analysis paralysis. No negotiation. Because they've learned that thinking about it for too long is the fastest way to kill the fire before it turns into action. If you want freedom, if you want momentum, if you want results, you have to develop a bias toward action. You have to catch yourself when the mind starts spinning stories and shut it down with movement. Move first, think later. Let the feedback come from reality, not from the imaginary disasters in your head. Because the truth is, most of the things you fear won't happen. The obstacles you think exist dissolve. The moment you step toward them, overthinking is the enemy of execution, and execution is the only path to transformation. Build a bias toward action. If you want to change your life, there is one skill you must master above all else: the ability to act without hesitation. A bias toward action isn't just a habit. It's an identity. It's the transformation from someone who lives in their head, endlessly analyzing, endlessly waiting, endlessly thinking, into someone who executes, someone who moves. Because the world doesn't reward those who think about doing. It rewards those who do. The difference between the person who wins and the one who watches is simple: movement. Most people don't realize that hesitation is a habit. It gets reinforced every single time you pause, every time you wait for more certainty, every time you convince yourself that now isn't the right time. The brain is always watching what you do. If you repeatedly hesitate, the brain learns that hesitation is your normal response to challenge. You train yourself into delay. You condition yourself to stop when it should be go. And with every repetition, the gap between thinking and doing grows wider. It becomes the new default, one that locks you in a prison of stagnation. But here's the truth that few understand. Just as hesitation can be trained, so can action. You can rewire your mind to associate discomfort with movement rather than avoidance. You can teach your nervous system that the moment resistance shows up, that's the exact signal to move, not to freeze. You do it by killing the micro moments of delay. The split second where the mind starts whispering maybe later. You crush it with immediate action. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. Now, this is how you override the mental programming that's kept you stuck. Building a bias toward action starts with rejecting the idea that you need to feel ready. You must burn the lie that says clarity comes before movement. The reality is simple. Clarity is the reward for action, not the prerequisite. You figure it out by doing, not by thinking. Every time you force yourself to move before you feel like it, you lay down a new neural pathway. The brain starts learning that hesitation is no longer the default. Action is, movement is, progress is, and the more you practice this, the faster the mind starts rewiring. Eventually, it stops questioning, stops overanalyzing, and starts reacting with immediate forward momentum. The reflex shifts from can I or should I to go. That's who you become. Someone who doesn't negotiate with himself, someone who doesn't wait for the perfect mood, someone who doesn't let fear. Who you become. Doubt or resistance set the pace. Kill hesitation, kill delay, move. Let the discomfort become the green light, not the stop sign. Let the doubt fuel the action. Not suffocate it, because the reality is simple. The people who win are not the ones who think the most, plan the most, or prepare the most. They are the ones who step into the unknown, who move into the resistance, who train their minds to fire without delay. They are the ones who have built a bias toward action. And because of that, the world bends to them. Make discomfort your default. Discomfort is the dividing line between the life you have and the life you want. Most people spend their entire existence running from it, avoiding it at all costs, treating it like something to be feared. But those who rise, those who dominate in any area of life, have learned a truth that the masses never grasp. Discomfort isn't the enemy. It's the compass. It's the signal. It's the clearest indicator of where growth lives. The places that scare you, the tasks that make you hesitate, the challenges that make your stomach twist, that's where your evolution waits. And the faster you train yourself to stop avoiding those moments, and instead lean directly into them, the faster you separate yourself from everyone who never will. Training yourself to crave discomfort is a deliberate act of rebellion against the weakness the world wants you to adopt. You do it by rewiring your mind to interpret resistance, not as a barrier, but as a signal. When something feels hard, when fear creeps in, when every part of you wants to back off, that's the green light. In the moment you lean in, not step back. You stop asking yourself whether you feel like doing it, whether it's convenient, whether it's easy. You erase those questions from your vocabulary. The only question that matters is, does this make me uncomfortable? If the answer is yes, you go. You move toward it with intention, with aggression, with purpose. Discomfort. Over time, this becomes your operating system. Discomfort stops feeling threatening. It starts feeling familiar. It starts feeling like home. You begin to crave it because you understand that every time you lean into it, you walk out the other side stronger, sharper, more dangerous. The tasks others avoid become the very tasks that sharpen you. Where they retreat, you advance. Where they seek relief, you seek the next battle. The weak avoid discomfort and pay for it with mediocrity. The strong chase it and are rewarded with mastery. You have to decide who you're going to be. Discomfort is not a punishment. It's the path. It's the proving ground. It's the gate you must walk through every single day if you ever want to become the version of yourself that lives on the other side of fear. Make discomfort your default, where at points you go. Every time, no exceptions. Break the perfect moment myth. The perfect moment is a lie. A beautifully crafted illusion designed to keep you stuck exactly where you are. It's the mind's most clever excuse disguised as patience, wrapped in the language of logic. You tell yourself, I'll start when things calm down, when I have more time, when I feel ready, when everything aligns. But the brutal truth is this: the right time never comes. It never has, and it never will. Life doesn't hand out perfect conditions. It doesn't pause the chaos, the uncertainty, or the resistance just because you decided you're finally ready to move. The people who wait for the perfect moment never get started. And if they do, it's already too late. Every second you spend waiting for some magical alignment is a second you willingly surrender to weakness. The need for perfection is nothing more than fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. You convince yourself that waiting is responsible, that it's the smart move, but really, It's just a sophisticated form of procrastination. A justification to avoid the very thing you know you need to do. And as you wait, momentum dies. The window starts to close, the distance between who you are and who you could have been widens. Here's what winners know that most will never accept. The best time to start is always now. Not because the conditions are right, but because they never will be. Progress belongs to those who take messy, imperfect, relentless action. The first steps will be ugly, the process will be chaotic. You will stumble, you will fail, you will make mistakes, and none of that matters. Because perfection isn't the goal. Movement is. The ones who succeed are not the ones who did it perfectly. They're the ones who showed up when it was hard, when it was uncertain, when it was uncomfortable and did it anyway. Waiting for the right time is the fastest way to guarantee the time will pass. You will wake up a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now realizing that the window you were waiting for never opened. Because it never existed. The ones who win don't ask for the perfect moment. They create momentum despite the mess. Momentum. They move forward when they're tired, when they're scared, when they're uncertain, when they feel like quitting. And every step they take, no matter how sloppy, compounds into strength. You have to decide what matters more. Looking polished or making progress, because you don't get both. You either embrace the chaos and move or sit frozen, waiting for conditions that will never exist. The perfect moment isn't coming. No one is coming to tell you it's time. There will never be less risk, less fear, or less uncertainty. There is only now. And now is enough. Take the leap, take the swing, take the step, messy. Flawed, relentless action will always beat perfect inaction, every single time. How to start when you don't feel like it. There will always be days when the weight of resistance feels suffocating. Days when every fiber of your body screams for comfort, when your mind invents 1,000 rational reasons to delay, when the idea of starting feels heavier than the task itself. But here's the truth that high performers understand better than anyone else. Waiting to feel like it is a losing strategy. The mind will rarely hand you the perfect mental state on a silver platter. If you want to win, you have to stop relying on how you feel and start relying on your ability to bypass resistance altogether. The real battle is never the task itself. It's the start, it's the first step, the first 5 minutes. That is where resistance lives. Once momentum takes over, the task becomes easier, but getting past that initial wall is where most people lose. They stare at the mountain, paralyzed, overwhelmed, convincing themselves that they don't have the energy, the focus, the willpower, and so they wait, but the longer they wait, the heavier it becomes. Micro starts. The antidote to this isn't some magic burst of motivation. It's strategy. It's understanding that the brain is like a stubborn machine, one that responds not to negotiation, but to momentum. The key is to lower the entry barrier so far that the mind has no room to fight back. You don't commit to running 10 miles. You commit to putting on your shoes. You don't commit to writing an entire chapter. You commit to opening your laptop and writing one sentence. This is the concept of micro starts, the hidden weapon of the discipline. The mind's resistance isn't to the entire task. It's to the idea of starting. Once you're in motion, the mind adapts. The fog lifts. What felt impossible 5 minutes ago suddenly feels manageable, even easy. Micro starts trick the brain. They disarm the resistance by reframing the task from overwhelming to insignificant. You give yourself permission to do the smallest version of the task, not as a cop-out, but as a Trojan horse for action. Because the moment you start, the mind shifts gears. It realizes the thing you were avoiding isn't nearly as painful as the endless cycle of avoidance. The dread dissolves. The momentum builds, and before you know it, you've blown past the minimum and into real productive effort. This is how the disciplined override the trap of not feeling like it. They don't wait to change their mood. They change their mood by moving. They create psychological momentum by focusing only on the first tiny step, knowing full well that once they breach that wall, the rest takes care of itself. The internal resistance that felt unbreakable evaporates. The second motion begins. If you can master this, If you can program yourself to focus only on the first inch instead of the entire mile, you will become unstoppable. Because once the start is easy, the follow-through becomes inevitable. The hardest part of the battle was never the work itself. It was convincing yourself to begin. And now you know how to win that war every single time. Become the person who acts. There is a fundamental shift that happens when you stop seeing action as something you occasionally do and start seeing it as a reflection of who you are. This is where most people get it wrong. They treat action like a task, like a temporary event they have to force themselves into. They wake up, they look at the mountain of things they've been avoiding, and they try to push themselves to climb it. But because they still see action as something foreign, something outside themselves, the resistance never goes away. The struggle is endless. They are always fighting against their own identity, trying to force a behavior that doesn't match who they believe themselves to be. And that is exactly why they stay stuck. Action, real sustained action, isn't a task. It isn't a checklist, it's an identity. The most powerful transformation you can ever make is to stop telling yourself "I need." To start doing things and start declaring "I am the kind of person who acts." This is not semantics, it is a complete rewiring of your brain, your self-image, and your belief system. Because as long as you believe, you are someone who struggles with consistency, someone who procrastinates, someone who hesitates, your actions will always be chained to that belief. You will fight yourself at every step. But when you shift into the identity of someone who acts, the fight ends. It simply becomes what you do because it's who you are. The person who acts doesn't sit around negotiating with their mind. They don't waste mental energy deciding whether they feel like it today. Their self-image answers the question before it's ever asked. This is what I do. This is who I am. And because identity drives behavior, the moment you believe this about yourself, your actions fall in line. The gym isn't a debate. The difficult conversation isn't something to overthink. The project doesn't get delayed. Why? Because the question isn't whether you should act. Identity drives behavior. It's already answered. The only thing left is execution. The shift from I wanted to I am is where the game changes. I want to be disciplined is the language of someone hoping for change. It's fragile, it leaves room for failure. But I am disciplined becomes a command. It becomes a lens through which every decision passes. Anything that aligns with that identity gets a yes, anything that doesn't gets a no. This is the psychological armor that high performers wear. It's what separates the doers from the dreamers. But here's the reality. Identity is built, not given. You're not born with it. You don't stumble into it. You forge it, decision by decision, repetition by repetition. Every time you choose action over comfort, every time you override the voice that says not now, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. And the more votes you cast, the more the brain accepts it as truth. Suddenly it's not effort anymore, it's autopilot. The hesitation fades, the resistance weakens. Because you've become the person who acts, not someone pretending to be. Crafting this relentless, unstoppable self, a Messiah, is a process of elimination and reinforcement. You eliminate the narratives that no longer serve you, the story that you're someone who always quits, someone who's inconsistent, someone who's easily distracted. Those narratives are not facts. They are patterns, and patterns can be broken. You reinforce the new identity by behaving like it's already true. You don't wait until you feel like the person who acts. You behave like that person, until the world, your brain and your results have no choice but to catch up. It's brutal at first. The old version of you will fight back. It will whisper every excuse it's ever used. It will try to drag you back to what's familiar, what's easy, what's safe. But every time you override it, even in the smallest ways, you weaken it, you starve it, and every time you choose the action, no matter how small, you feed the identity of someone who moves, someone who executes, someone who wins. Action becomes identity. This is the real secret that no one talks about. Success isn't about tricks, hacks, or even discipline alone. It's about becoming the kind of person for whom discipline is a natural extension of who they are. It's not something they summon. It's something they embody. When others are still stuck thinking, I should, the person who acts is already moving. They don't wait for clarity, because they know clarity comes from motion. They don't wait to feel confident, because they know confidence is built through execution. The life you want, the goals you keep thinking about, the version of yourself that haunts you. Every time you choose comfort over progress, it's not waiting at the end of some perfect day when everything aligns. It's waiting on the other side of this decision to become the person who acts tomorrow, not next week, now. You step into it before you feel ready. You wear it like a second skin. You breathe it, you live it, until there's no distinction between what you do and who you are, because when action becomes identity, you become unstoppable, and there's not a force in this world that can hold you back. Burn the ships. Remove the option to quit. There comes a point in every person's life when they are faced with a choice. Climb to the safety of their excuses, their backup plans and their escape routes, or destroy the exit completely and go all in. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they've left themselves and out. A mental back door that whispers, if this gets too hard, if it doesn't work, if it feels uncomfortable, I can always walk away. And as long as that door exists, as long as quitting remains an option, the mind will find ways to rationalize using it. This is why the concept of burning the ships holds so much power. It's more than just a catchy phrase. It's a psychological shift, a line in the sand that says, I'm done negotiating, I'm done entertaining the idea of failure. This isn't something I'll try, this is something I will do, period. It comes from a brutal primal truth. The only option. When there is no way back, when retreat is off the table, the only direction left is forward. And forward becomes not just a choice, but the only option. Most people approach their goals with a half-in, half-out mentality. They say they want to change, to level up, to build something extraordinary. But they leave little escape hatches everywhere. It shows up in phrases like, I'll give it a shot, or if it doesn't work, I can always go back, or I'll try for a few weeks and see how it feels. This language is weakness disguised as reason. It's a lack of commitment wearing the mask of being reasonable, and it guarantees failure before the first step is even taken, because when the pressure rises, when discomfort hits, when things don't go according to plan and they never do, the mind will sprint toward the exits you've left unlocked. The ones who win remove those exits completely. They burn the ship, they make quitting impossible. Not because they never feel doubt, not because they never feel fear, but because they've stripped themselves of the luxury of escape. When failure isn't an option, you stop entertaining distractions. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You stop giving energy to anything that isn't directly tied to forward movement. Suddenly, your only job becomes to figure it out, no matter how messy, no matter how painful, no matter how long it takes. This shift from I'll try to, I must, is where transformation truly begins. When you stop treating your goals like a hobby and start treating them like survival, everything changes. Transformation begins. The energy is different. The urgency is real. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop needing to feel ready. You move because moving is the only thing left. You execute because execution is survival. The mind, once crippled by hesitation and doubt, now sharpens into a weapon of focus. Because when the option to quit dies, creativity is born. Resourcefulness comes alive. Solutions appear where before, there were only problems. When your brain knows there's no way back, it stops looking for the easy path and starts constructing the right one. Think about it. How differently would you approach your goals if quitting wasn't on the table? How much more focus, more fire, more grit would you summon if you had no choice but to succeed? Most people never find out because they never demand it from themselves. They always leave it out, a little softness around the edges. A plan B, a mental cushion for failure. But those who rise understand that the safety net is the enemy. It looks like protection, but it breeds weakness. It creates the subconscious permission slip to give less than everything. When you burn the ships, truly burn them, you send a message not just to the world, but to yourself. A message that says, I'm not going back. I don't retreat, I don't surrender. This is happening because it has to happen. And with that message, the entire way you carry yourself changes. You attack the day differently. You approach obstacles not as reasons to stop, but as puzzles to solve. Failure stops being an endpoint and becomes feedback. Setback, Stop being permission to quit and become fuel to push harder. You don't leave the gym early. You don't skip the difficult tasks. You don't push your goals to tomorrow because there is no tomorrow. Not in your mind. There is only this moment. This rep, this task, this fight. This is what happens when there's no way back. You become dangerous, focused, relentless, unstoppable. The truth is, most people are only half living, half chasing, half trying. And as long as they're half in, life gives them half the results. But the moment you decide that there is no other option, that this is it, that success isn't a wish, but a demand, you start moving like a different creature entirely. You become the person who does not quit. The person who does not negotiate with weakness. The person who is willing to suffer, to sacrifice, to bleed if that's what it takes, because the only direction left is forward. So burn the ships, burn them until there's no way back, until the only thing left is the fight in front of you. And then you fight, you rise, you win, because when retreat isn't an option, victory becomes inevitable. The motion is irrelevant, execution is everything. The world has sold you a lie. A beautifully seductive lie that says you should wait until you feel ready. Wait until you feel motivated. Wait until the stars align emotionally before you move. It's the lie that keeps people stuck in cycles of mediocrity, of starting and stopping, of drifting between bursts of motivation, followed by long stretches of paralysis. The truth is as brutal as it is liberating. Your feelings do not matter, not when it comes to discipline, not when it comes to execution, not when it comes to building anything meaningful. If you are waiting to feel like doing the work, you have already lost. The ones who rise, the ones who dominate their craft, their body, their life, they learned how to cut the cord between emotion and action. They move whether they feel like it or not. They execute as if their emotions are completely irrelevant because they are. The problem is that you've been conditioned to believe that emotions should dictate behavior. Tired, rest, unmotivated, take a break, feeling uninspired, wait until inspiration comes. This is the software of weakness, the programming that changed people to the floor of their own potential. The harsh reality is that the part of you that wants comfort, that craves ease, that seeks relief, it's not on your side. It's the voice of weakness disguised as self-care. It whispers that it's okay to delay, to skip, to take it easy, because you don't feel like it today. Execution is the cure. But that voice has no interest in your growth, no interest in your power. Its only mission is to protect you from discomfort, even if that means suffocating every dream you've ever had. Execution is the cure. Pure, ruthless, mechanical execution. You stop asking how you feel about the task. You stop evaluating whether your mood is aligned with the work. You simply decide that the work happens. Regardless. Period. The gym doesn't care if you're tired. The business doesn't care if you're uninspired. The opportunity doesn't wait for you to be in the mood. The world rewards execution. Not intention, not feelings, only results. This is the psychological shift that separates the disciplined from the distracted. You learn to detach completely. You become a machine with a purpose, not because you are emotionless, but because you refuse to let emotions run the show. You can feel tired. You can feel bored. You can feel overwhelmed. None of it matters. The work still happens. You show up. You execute. You move forward every single time. No negotiation, no compromise. Operating like a machine doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've transcended the weakness of letting transient emotions dictate the trajectory of your life. The discipline understands this. Emotions are visitors. They come and go. But action is a choice. You cannot control how you feel in every moment, but you can control whether you act, and the more you practice acting independent of how you feel, the stronger you become. Soon the gap between intention and action disappears. You stop needing to psych yourself up. You stop searching for motivation. You move because movement is who you are. The people who achieve mastery, whether in fitness, business, art, or life, do not achieve it because they are consistently inspired. They achieve it because they are consistently executing. They don't miss because they feel off. Movement is who you are. They don't skip because the mood isn't perfect. They've trained their nervous system to obey one command. It's time to work. No questions, no internal debate, no waiting for the right emotional state. This is what freedom looks like. The freedom from being enslaved by your own feelings. Ask yourself how much time you've lost waiting to feel like it. How many days, weeks, years have slipped by because the mood wasn't right? How many opportunities passed while you waited for some internal green light that never came? And the cruel joke is that the act of waiting only creates more inertia. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. The more you hesitate, the heavier the task feels. But the second you detach, the moment you decide that feelings are irrelevant and execution is everything, the fog lifts. You realize it was never the task that was heavy. It was your attachment to comfort that weighed you down. You have to train yourself to move like a machine with a purpose. The purpose is what matters. The mission is what matters. Not the noise in your head, not the emotion in your chest. You rise above it. You transcend it. You do the work, whether it feels good, whether it feels bad, whether it feels neutral. And in doing so, you become untouchable. The storms come, but you remain steady. The doubt creeps in, but you still move. Fatigue whispers, but you drown it out with discipline. When you kill the idea that your feelings matter more than your actions, you unlock a level of power that most people never even glimpse. You realize that the key to an extraordinary life isn't found in waiting for the right mood. It's found in mastering yourself to the point where mood is irrelevant. There is only the mission. There is only the work. There is only execution. Everything else is noise. Rewire your brain through repetition. The secret to becoming unstoppable isn't some hidden hack or magical strategy. It's repetition. Ruthless, disciplined, relentless repetition. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy, but it is the truth. It is the brutal, undeniable truth that most people spend their entire lives running from. Repetition is the truth. Because repetition is hard. It's boring. It's uncomfortable, but it's also the most powerful force in the universe when it comes to changing who you are and what you're capable of becoming. You are what you repeatedly do. Your brain is a machine designed to automate whatever you feed it. Every action, every decision, every habit is a signal. And the more consistently you send that signal, the stronger the neural pathways become. The brain doesn't care whether those signals are positive or negative. It doesn't judge whether the habits serve you or destroy you. It only knows what you feed it. You repeatedly choose procrastination. The brain wires for procrastination. If you repeatedly choose discipline, the brain wires for discipline. The process is simple, ruthlessly simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. Most people live their entire lives trapped in the feedback loop of their own bad habits. Not because they're lazy, not because they're broken, but because they don't understand that every repeated behavior becomes a vote for the kind of person they are becoming. They let inconsistency define them. They dabble, they start, they stop, they try when they feel good, and they retreat when it gets hard. And in doing so, they reinforce weakness every single day without realizing it. But here's the truth that will set you free. Discipline is not something you're born with. It's not some genetic gift. It's a skill, a muscle, a pattern. And like any muscle, it grows through repetition. You don't wake up one day suddenly disciplined. You become disciplined because you show up day after day regardless of how you feel. You train the brain to understand that there is no other option but forward. And with every repetition, the resistance weakens. The task that once felt heavy starts to feel normal. What used to require massive effort becomes baseline. You evolve, you ascend. This is the compound effect in its purest form. Small actions executed daily do not stay small. They compound, they stack. The compound effect. They create momentum that becomes impossible to stop. Most people underestimate how powerful this is because the effects are invisible at first. The first few days of showing up don't change much. The first week of consistency barely moves the needle. And that's where the weak fall off. They tell themselves it's not working. They convince themselves that if the change isn't immediate, it must not be worth it. And so they quit. What they fail to understand is that momentum is a snowball. It starts small, almost imperceptible. But with every repetition, it grows larger, heavier, faster, until eventually it becomes an unstoppable force. The magic happens when repetition shifts the act from effort to identity. At first, getting up early is brutal. Hitting the gym feels like war. Sitting down to work feels like a grind. But then something shifts. The brain catches on. It starts rewiring. It starts recognizing, oh, this is who we are now. This is what we do. And the moment that shift happens, the behavior stops feeling foreign. It stops feeling like a fight. It becomes automatic. It becomes effortless. Not because the work is easier, but because who you are has evolved. You are no longer someone who tries to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You are no longer someone who wants to be consistent. You are consistent. It is no longer something you have to force. It is simply who you are. And that is where true power lives. Because once the behavior becomes identity, the friction disappears. The debates with yourself and the internal resistance fades. You don't skip the workout because it's not even a question. You don't procrastinate on the work because showing up is what you do. You don't allow weakness to creep back in because there is no space for it in the operating system you've built. But it all starts with repetition, not massive heroic effort once in a while, but small, consistent, disciplined acts executed relentlessly. Show up. Do the thing every day. Whether you feel like it or not, whether anyone's watching or not, whether it feels significant or not, every small act matters. Because the truth is every small act matters. Every rep counts. Every moment of discipline is another brick in the fortress of mental toughness you are building. It doesn't look like much on day 1. It doesn't look like much on day 5. But check back in 6 months. Check back in a year. You won't recognize yourself. This is how ordinary people become extraordinary. Not through luck, not through talent, through repetition, through the relentless commitment to casting votes for the person they are becoming. Day after day, brick after brick, until the mind, the body and the soul have no choice but to conform to the undeniable truth. This is who we are now. This is what we do. And nothing can shake it. Destroy procrastination rituals. Procrastination isn't just a bad habit. It's a ritual, a predictable, repeatable pattern that your brain runs every time you face something uncomfortable, difficult, or uncertain. It disguises itself as harmless distraction. The harsh reality is that procrastination isn't random. It's engineered. It's a ritual that starts with a cue. The moment you feel discomfort, pressure, or the slightest bit of resistance, the mind immediately searches for an escape. Something easy, something pleasurable, something that offers the illusion of productivity without requiring the discomfort of actually doing the real work. You open the task, but suddenly the dishes look like they desperately need washing. You sit down to write, but decide you should clear your inbox first. These are not accidents. These are programmed avoidance behaviors that your brain has rewarded so many times that they've become second nature. The first step to destroying procrastination is ruthless self-awareness. You must become a sniper, observing your patterns, tracking your triggers, calling out the micro behaviors that you've allowed to steal your time and energy. Because procrastination isn't always loud, sometimes it's silent. Wears the mask of low-level busyness. It disguises itself as preparation, as planning, as organizing. But underneath it all, it's avoidance. It's the refusal to do what actually moves the needle. High-leverage action rituals. The uncomfortable truth is that as long as these rituals remain undisturbed, procrastination owns you. You will always default back to them. The second discomfort shows up, and it's not a matter of motivation. It's not about whether you care enough. It's mechanical neural pathways that have been reinforced over years don't dissolve because you want it badly. They dissolve because you replace them. You overwrite them with something stronger, something deliberate. Something that turns resistance into a trigger for action instead of avoidance. This is where high-leverage action rituals come in. You don't fight procrastination by wrestling with it in the moment. You destroy it by replacing the automatic delay loop with an automatic execution loop. It starts the moment resistance appears to start to attack, to open the task. The document, the workout, the challenge, before your brain has a chance to negotiate you out of it. You rewire this by making the first action non-negotiable. The second the hesitation appears. You anchor yourself to a ritual that forces momentum. Stand up, open the file. Put on the workout shoes, hit start on the timer, move. No debate, no thinking, just immediate physical action tied directly to the task. This becomes your new ritual, your new baseline. Procrastination cannot survive in an environment where motion happens before the brain has time to invent an excuse. At the same time, you must aggressively dismantle the structures that enable procrastination. Your environment cannot be designed for distraction and then expect discipline to win. You physically remove the devices that pull your focus. You clear your workspace of anything unrelated to the mission in front of you. Discipline isn't about superhuman willpower. It's about engineering an environment where the path of least resistance leads directly to execution. Excuses become irrelevant in this system. The same mind that once crafted 1,000 clever reasons to delay now has no room for that noise because there's no space for negotiation when the ritual is hardwired into movement. Action versus procrastination. It becomes mechanical. The trigger fires and the behavior follows. You don't wait until the task feels easy. You don't check in with your emotions. You simply follow the ritual. Just like you once followed the ritual of avoidance. Now you follow the ritual of action. And the most powerful part, each time you choose action over delay, the brain rewires. The neural pathways for procrastination grow weaker while the pathways for discipline grow stronger. What used to feel like a fight becomes automatic. What used to drain your energy now feeds it because action begets clarity. Action begets momentum. Action begets power. This is how you become someone who no longer fights procrastination because procrastination is no longer part of your identity. The old rituals die. The loops of distraction dissolve and what replaces them is a machine. A mind that responds to resistance with movement. A nervous system trained to use discomfort as fuel, not a reason to retreat. When the world hesitates, you move. When others are caught in loops of delay, you are already executing. This is the edge. This is how you take back your time, your focus, your life. You destroy procrastination, not with hope, not with discipline alone, but with a system of ruthless repetition. One that makes action your default, your identity, your way of being. The war against resistance. Resistance is not a flaw in your design. It's not some defect that only you struggle with. Resistance is a law of nature. It's as real and inevitable as gravity. It shows up every single time you move towards something meaningful. Every time you aim higher, push further, step into discomfort, or try to elevate yourself beyond where you currently are. Resistance appears. It's the invisible force that tries to pull you back to safety, back to comfort, back to the mediocre version of yourself that it knows well. This isn't personal. This is universal. Resistance doesn't target the weak or the lazy. It targets anyone attempting to become more. The mistake most people make is treating resistance like a sign that something is wrong. They believe that if the task feels heavy, if the fear is loud, if the doubt creeps in, maybe they're on the wrong path. Maybe they aren't ready. Maybe they don't have what it takes. But the truth is the exact opposite. Resistance doesn't show up when you're doing something meaningless. It shows up because you're doing something that matters. It's a signal not to stop, but to move. It's the clearest indicator that you are right where you need to be. Every single day without exception is a battle between who you are and who you could become. There is no finish line to this war. No day when resistance simply vanishes and you glide effortlessly through your ambitions without friction. The lie of waiting until it feels easier, until the fear subsides, until the mental weight disappears. That's resistance winning because its greatest weapon isn't brute force, it's delay. It's whispering not now, later, tomorrow, soon. It doesn't need you to quit outright. It just needs you to pause long enough for the fire to burn out. The discipline, the relentless. The ones who rise, they don't escape resistance, they learn to expect it. They wake up every day prepared for the fight. They understand that resistance is the cost of greatness. It's the toll you pay for trying to cross from the version of yourself that is comfortable and known to the version that is powerful and unknown. And every time you choose to act in spite of it, every time you choose to push instead of pause, you win a battle. The war isn't won in one day. It's won over thousands of small victories. Each one a choice not to surrender. To never surrender to resistance again. You must change how you see it. It cannot be treated like an enemy that surprises you. It must become an opponent you expect. An adversary that sharpens you. The presence of resistance doesn't mean stop. It means go. It doesn't mean retreat. It means advance. It's not a wall, it's a door. One that only opens to those willing to push. The discipline no longer see resistance as something to avoid. The moment. They've trained themselves to use it as a trigger. The moment it shows up, it confirms they're doing something that matters. And rather than pull back, they lean in. This is how the shift happens. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel this way?" or "Why is this so hard?" you start saying, "Of course it feels this way." This is the process. You don't waste energy fighting the fact that resistance exists. You conserve that energy for the fight that actually matters. Doing the work anyway. The moment you stop negotiating with resistance, you rob it of its power. Feeds on hesitation, it grows stronger when you pause to question whether you're ready. But when your response becomes immediate movement, no debate, no hesitation, it starts to weaken. It becomes background noise. The only way resistance wins is if you start believing it means something. If you accept the story that hard equals impossible, that discomfort equals danger, that fear means stop, you lose. But when you decide that resistance is simply proof of progress, proof that you're aiming higher, it loses its grip. You stop flinching when it shows up. You stop negotiating with it. You stop letting it dictate the pace of your life. This is the war. And it never ends, but you get stronger. You get faster, you get sharper. What used to paralyze you becomes the very thing that fuels you. The voice that once said not today becomes the cue that today is exactly the day. The weight that used to crush you becomes the resistance that builds your strength. You no longer dread the battle. You welcome it, because you understand that resistance is not the enemy. Stagnation is weaknesses. Living a life beneath your potential is. The version of you that wins this war is already inside you. It's the one that shows up when it's hard. The one that pushes when every part of you wants to pull back. The one that understands that resistance is not something to be feared, but something to be mastered. And mastery doesn't come from waiting for it to disappear. Deadlines. It comes from facing it head on over and over until it breaks before you do. This is how you never surrender. This is how you win every day, every battle, every time. Harness the power of deadlines. There is an undeniable force that has the power to strip away hesitation, eliminate overthinking, and force action like nothing else: urgency. When time is limited, when the clock is ticking, when the window is closing, something primal kicks in. The fog of procrastination disappears. Clarity sharpens, the body moves, the mind focuses. And the nonsense that usually clutters your thoughts, the doubts, the perfectionism, the excuses, all fades into the background. This is the power of a deadline. It's not just a tool for getting things done. It's a weapon. The reason most people stay stuck is because their goals have no teeth. No consequence, no urgency. They wake up with vague intentions like, I should start that project. I should get serious about my fitness. I should really launch that business soon, but should has no pressure behind it. Soon has no deadline attached to it. And because there's no consequence for delay, the mind slips into comfort, into avoidance, into endless loops of thinking, planning, and waiting. Days pass. Suddenly, years have gone by and nothing has moved. Not because they were incapable, but because there was no pressure forcing them to move. Urgency is the antidote. It is the force that flips the brain into execution mode. Human beings are hardwired to respond to deadlines. That's why the most productive people in the world often do more in the last 24 hours before something is due than they did in the previous 3 weeks. The looming pressure of time collapsing forces focus. It eliminates distractions. It makes the irrelevant invisible and spotlights what must be done. There's no room left for overthinking. There's no space left for doubt. It's just do it now or lose. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They only apply deadlines when someone else imposes them. A boss, a client, a school assignment. When there's external pressure, they perform. But when it comes to their own goals, their own dreams, their own growth, they remove the deadline completely. They leave it open-ended. One day, someday, eventually. And that's why it never happens. The brain knows there's no consequence for delay. So delay becomes the default. The discipline to have figured this out. They understand that if life isn't going to hand them urgency, they have to manufacture it. They set artificial deadlines. They create pressure where none naturally exists. They turn a vague goal like I want to write a book into. The first draft is finished in 30 days non-negotiable. They turn, I should get in shape into, by the end of this month, I've trained 20 times minimum. They don't wait for the stakes to rise. They raise them. This is how urgency becomes a weapon. You stop being someone who waits for pressure and start being someone who creates it. You no longer leave the door open for procrastination to walk in. You slam it shut with deadlines so aggressive that the brain has no choice but to comply. Because the moment the mind believes time is running out, everything else fades. The resistance weakens. The excuses lose their power. Action becomes inevitable. But deadlines alone aren't enough. The brain is clever. If the deadline only exists in your head, it knows it can negotiate. No one will know if I miss this, I can extend it. It's just me anyway. This is where accountability enters. And make no mistake, accountability isn't optional. It's a weapon. When you make the deadline public, when you commit to someone else, when you put your reputation, hook your word, your pride on the line. The stakes rise, the pressure multiplies. Now failure isn't private. Now backing down isn't invisible. Now the mind knows there is no safe retreat. This is how high performers force themselves to operate at levels most people never reach. They create deadlines that compress time. They eliminate the luxury of waiting. And they tie those deadlines to accountability mechanisms so strong that failure isn't just disappointing. It's humiliating. They understand that the mind is lazy by design, always searching for the path of least resistance. But when the clock is ticking, when the commitment is made, when the walls close in, the mind stops searching for comfort. It locks in, it executes. If you look back at every time you've truly delivered at a high level, whether it was finishing something last minute, rising to the occasion under pressure, or surprising yourself with what you pulled off, it wasn't because you felt wildly motivated. It was because the clock was ticking, because there was no more time to wait, because the alternative to execution was failure. You had to move. You had to perform. You had to win. That is what urgency does, and the lesson is simple. You don't have to wait for life to create that pressure. You can create it yourself. You must. Without urgency, discipline decays. Without pressure, focus evaporates. Without deadlines, dreams stay dreams. But the moment you turn eventually into by Friday at 5 p.m., the moment you tie it to your pride, your reputation, or someone holding you accountable, you become dangerous. You become the person who moves when others hesitate, who executes while others make excuse, who rises while others stay stuck. The clock is the greatest motivator ever invented. Use it. Strap it to every goal. Attach it to every mission. Stop giving yourself forever. Start giving yourself now, because urgency isn't stress, it's power. It's clarity. Action is greater than confidence. One of the greatest lies ever told is that confidence is something you wait for, that it's a prerequisite to action, that you need to feel ready, feel sure, feel certain before you can finally move. This belief is a trap, a beautifully packaged excuse that's robbed more people of their potential than failure ever has. The truth, the raw, unfiltered truth, is that confidence doesn't come before action. It comes after. It is built in the doing. It is forged in the fire of movement. In the uncomfortable, messy, terrifying space between starting and succeeding, between preparing, work, sleeping, and the ones who win don't move because they're confident. They become confident because they moved. Most people sit on the sidelines of their own life, paralyzed, waiting for some magical shift to occur inside of them. They tell themselves, when I feel more sure, when I know enough, when I'm more prepared, then I'll start. But that moment never comes because confidence doesn't arrive like a gift dropped out of the sky. It's a reward, a byproduct of proving to yourself over and over that you are capable of doing hard things, that you are capable of acting even when your hands shake, even when the doubt is screaming, even when the fear feels suffocating. The people who are moving, who are growing, who are winning, they didn't start with confidence. They started scared. They started unsure. They started doubting themselves every step of the way. The only difference is that they moved anyway. They stepped into the storm of uncertainty while everyone else stood on the edge, waiting for the winds to calm. They didn't need perfect clarity to take the first step. They simply accepted the truth that clarity doesn't come before action. It's created by it. The mind loves to convince you that you're being responsible when you wait, that it's wise to hold back until you feel ready. But what it's really doing is protecting you from discomfort. It's the same old trick dressed in new clothes. Waiting to feel confident is nothing more than procrastination disguised as preparation. The mind's way of keeping you safe from the possibility of failure, of embarrassment, of pain. But here's the truth, it doesn't want you to know. The longer you wait, the heavier the fear becomes. The more you delay, the louder the doubt gets. Confidence does not grow in silence. It does not grow in waiting. It only grows in motion. Every act of courage, every display of confidence you've ever seen from athletes, leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, it all started in the same place. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. The difference isn't that they were fearless. The difference is that they moved anyway. They understood that the only way out of fear is through it. That waiting for fear to disappear is a fool's game. It never leaves. It simply loses its grip on those who refuse to obey it. This is the formula: you move scared. You move uncertain. You move with your knees shaking and your voice trembling. You do the thing badly. You do it imperfectly. You do it unsure. And through that movement, through the repetition of facing discomfort, you start to change. You start to notice that the thing you once feared doesn't control you anymore. That the walls you thought would crumble don't exist. That the monster you built in your head was paper, thin, all along. And suddenly, confidence starts to grow. Not because you waited for it, but because you earned it. Confidence is proof of past execution. It's the scar tissue of someone who did it afraid and lived to tell the story. The more you move, the more evidence you collect that you are capable. And the mind starts shifting. The narrative changes. From, I'm not sure if I can do this too, I've done hard things before, I can do this too. It's not magic. It's not motivation. It's biology. The brain rewires itself through experience, not through thought. But the tragic reality is that most never experience this shift because they wait. They let fear write the script of their life. They tell themselves stories like I'm just not ready or I'm not confident enough yet, and then wonder why nothing changes. But change was never going to arrive on its own. It was waiting for them to move first. You have to understand that the most confident people you've ever seen didn't start that way. They became that way by acting. Confidence isn't a requirement. It's a consequence. It's the trophy handed out to those who were willing to step forward without it. Those who were willing to fall, to fail, to get back up and go again. So you move scared. You move uncertain. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop waiting for the doubt to quiet down. Because it won't. Not until you act. You move because movement is the only force strong enough to silence the noise. You move because action is the only path to growth. You move because the version of you who's waiting for confidence will wait forever. But the version of you who acts without it becomes unstoppable. This is the way forward. Not through waiting, not through overthinking, but through relentless, imperfect, fearless action. The kind that says, I'll do it scared. I'll do it unsure. I'll do it anyway. And when you do, the confidence you were waiting for will finally show up. Not as a prerequisite, but as the reward for having the courage to move first. Focus is a superpower. In a world addicted to noise, distraction, and constant stimulation, the rarest and most valuable asset isn't talent. It isn't intelligence. It's focus. Pure, undiluted, razor-sharp focus. It's the ultimate superpower. The one that separates those who move the needle from those who are endlessly busy, but never actually progress. You can have all the motivation in the world. You can have the best strategies, the greatest ideas, the highest ambition. But if your focus is fractured, none of it matters. Scattered focus kills action. It dilutes your energy, your attention, your willpower, until all that left is frustration and exhaustion with nothing to show for it. The harsh truth is that you cannot build anything meaningful in a fragmented state. Greatness demands singularity of focus. Ruthless, obsessive concentration on one thing at a time. The world will try to convince you that multitasking is a skill. The juggling 10 things at once is a badge of honor. But this is a lie. The brain isn't designed for divided attention. Every time you switch tasks, every time you let your mind bounce between objectives, you pay a price. A cognitive tax. It drains your energy, destroys your momentum, and cripples your execution. The people who rise, who dominate, who seem superhuman in their productivity, they aren't superhuman at all. They've simply mastered the art of focus. They understand that doing one thing with full intensity beats doing 10 things poorly every single time. When they work, they work. No background noise. No checking. No bouncing between tasks. They eliminate, they ignore, and they attack one target with everything they have until it's done. Then they move to the next. This is what ruthless single-tail execution looks like. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not designed for dopamine hits. It's discipline in its purest form. It's choosing boredom over chaos. Silence over noise. Depth over distraction. When you step into this mode, the world shrinks. There is only the task, only the next action, only the objective in front of you. Everything else ceases to exist. And when you operate like this, you enter a flow state where the impossible starts to feel effortless. But here's the reality. This isn't your default setting. The modern world has trained you to be distracted. Every app, every platform, every device is engineered to fracture your attention. It's a war for your focus. And unless you fight back, unless you take back control, you lose. You become another casualty of the distraction economy. Another person who talks about doing big things, but spends most of their life bouncing between meaningless tasks, wondering why nothing ever changes. To reclaim focus, you have to become ruthless. You have to treat it like a sacred resource, because that's exactly what it is. You don't guard it casually. You protect it like your life depends on it. Because your future absolutely does. You eliminate anything that doesn't serve the mission. You shut the doors, silence the noise, and make it clear to yourself and to the world that your attention is no longer for sale. When you operate this way, something powerful happens. Your productivity skyrockets. Tasks that once dragged on for hours get done in a fraction of the time. You stop feeling overwhelmed because you're no longer juggling 5 things at once. You stop feeling scattered because your mind is no longer split between 10 different channels of noise. You gain clarity, you gain momentum, you gain power. Focus is discipline and motion. It's the physical manifestation of commitment. It says this matters. This is the mission and everything else can wait. And once you master it, you become dangerous while the world is drowning in distraction. You're building while they chase dopamine hits. You are chasing mastery. It won't be easy. The pull of distraction is relentless. Your own mind will rebel. It's been conditioned for instant gratification, for novelty, for the constant hit of something new. But this is the fight. This is the battlefield. And every time you resist, every time you choose depth over distraction, you win. You rewire the brain for focus, for discipline, for excellence. Understand this. The greatest threat to your goals isn't failure. It isn't rejection. It isn't even fear. The greatest threat is distraction. The greatest danger is living a life where your attention is so fractured that you never give your full power to anything. But the moment you decide to eliminate, to ignore and to attack, one target at a time, everything changes. Focus becomes your weapon, your superpower, the edge that makes you unstoppable. And the world won't know what hit it. Discipline the mind. Dominate the body. The war is always won in the mind, long before it ever reaches the body. The truth is brutal but simple. The body is nothing more than a servant to the mind. It does exactly what the mind allows it to do. If the mind is weak, the body crumbles under pressure. It seeks comfort, chooses the path of least resistance, quits when things get hard. But when the mind is disciplined, ruthless, and unrelenting, the body has no choice but to follow. No debate, no negotiation. The mind issues a command and the body obeys. End of discussion. The problem is that most people live in constant negotiation with themselves. They hear the voice that says we should get up early, we should train, we should work, we should push. But the moment discomfort shows up, they open the floor to debate. Do I feel like it today? Am I too tired? Maybe I need a rest. Maybe tomorrow. And once that conversation starts, they've already lost. The body will always default to comfort if the mind even hints that it's an option. Mastery begins when the negotiation ends. You train your mind to issue commands with finality. When the mind says move, the body doesn't argue. It doesn't hesitate. It executes, whether it's getting out of bed before the sun rises, grinding through the workout, your muscles are begging to skip, or tackling the hard tasks, your emotions are resisting. None of it is up for debate. The mind speaks. The body listens. Period. Building this military-grade discipline response system isn't about hype or motivation. It's about conditioning. It's about rewriting the software that runs your life. Every time you act without negotiation, every time you push, when the weaker part of your mind says stop, you reinforce a neural pathway. You teach yourself that your thoughts are not suggestions. They are orders. And over time, this conditioning becomes automatic. The gap between command and execution shrinks until there is no gap at all. You move because movement is non-negotiable. This is where real power lives. When the mind leads with discipline, the body becomes a weapon. Fatigue becomes irrelevant. Excuses become background noise. Weakness loses its grip. You start operating like a machine with a mission. There is no checking in with how you feel. There is no asking the body for permission. You've trained it to understand that discomfort is irrelevant to the decision-making process. The only question is whether the mission demands it. And if the answer is yes, the work gets done. No debate, no delay. This is what separates the average from the elite, the disciplined from the distracted. The moment you decide that the mind commands and the body obeys, you step into a different reality. One where execution isn't optional. One where results aren't random. One where success becomes inevitable. Rewards are earned, not given. Comfort has become a disease for most. Somewhere along the way, people began treating ease as the default, as if the world owed them relaxation, as if simply existing entitled them to reward. The truth is far less forgiving. Comfort was never meant to be the baseline. It was never designed to precede effort. Comfort is not the starting point. It is the trophy. The spoils of war after the battle has been fought. The reward for discipline displayed, for work executed, for resistance crushed. The moment you confuse the sequence. When comfort starts coming before the grind, you set yourself on the path to weakness. The sharpest, strongest minds in the world understand this at a level most never will. For them, comfort is sacred. It's not stolen. It's not taken without cause. It's earned. They deny themselves softness until the mission is complete. The satisfaction of knowing the work was done. The standard was upheld. The discipline was honored. Only then does rest become acceptable. Only then does the relaxation feel clean, powerful, truly restorative. When you've earned it, comfort doesn't weaken you. It sharpens you. It refuels you for the next fight. But when comfort becomes the starting point, it doesn't refresh you. It rots you. It feeds laziness disguised as self-care. It becomes an invisible poison. Pleasant in the moment, devastating in the long run. When you indulge before earning it, you teach your mind something dangerous. You teach it that rewards are detached from effort, that pleasure can exist without pain, that softness can exist without sacrifice. And that lesson leads to decay, to mediocrity, to the slow erosion of everything sharp, disciplined, and powerful within you. You have to engineer your mind differently. You have to build a system where reward only comes after work, where comfort isn't something you expect, but something you unlock. This is the disciplined first life. You wake up knowing that nothing pleasurable enters your life until the job is done, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional effort. It doesn't. The requirement is the same. Work first, grind first, sweat first, earn it. When you operate like this, something shifts. You begin associating pleasure with victory, not escape. Your mind starts linking comfort, not with avoiding hard things, but with conquering them. This is how true confidence gets built. Not from affirmations, not from hollow motivation, but from stacking days where you prove to yourself that you do not take the easy way out, that you do not accept softness without sacrifice. And the truth is, the rewards feel different when they are earned. Rest tastes better when it's soaked in discipline. Relaxation feels more potent when it's the aftermath of battle, not the substitute for effort. A simple break feels like a celebration rather than a betrayal. You no longer sit in guilt, no longer feel the weight of knowing you avoided what needed to be done. Because the work came first. Because you've kept the order sacred. This is how the most disciplined minds dominate long-term. They are not superhuman. They are not built differently. They've just mastered the art of delaying gratification. They've trained themselves to crave the feeling of completion more than the temptation of relief. They reject the softness that tries to seduce them before the battle is over. And because of that, they get stronger, harder, more resilient. While others are slipping into a life of comfort first and consequence later, the disciplined are stacking wins daily, ruthlessly, unapologetically. Comfort is a weapon when it's used correctly. It's fuel when it follows effort. It's restoration when it follows execution. But if you invert the formula, if you take the pleasure before the pain, it becomes a trap. You start weakening from the inside out. The mind softens, the body follows. Your goals start to feel heavier, harder, further away. Not because they are, but because you've drained yourself with comfort that was never earned. You have to make the decision now. You have to draw the line. From this point forward, nothing pleasurable happens until the hard thing is done. Until the workout is finished, until the project is completed, until the discipline has been honored. You begin conditioning your nervous system to understand that comfort follows conquest, nothing else. And when you do this long enough, it becomes automatic. It becomes who you are. You stop craving relief before the job is done. You stop searching for an escape. The grind becomes the baseline. The reward becomes the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence, not the beginning. This is the mindset that builds warriors, builders, leaders. It's how you develop a psychological edge that most will never understand. You hold the line when others don't. You delay what they give into. You choose to be hard where they choose to be soft. And because of that, the gap between you and them only widens every day, every choice, every moment. You demand the work first, the reward later. You step further away from the life of average and closer to the life of unstoppable. Rewards are earned, not given. There is a brutal law that governs every person who has ever achieved anything worth remembering. Comfort is not the starting point. It is the reward. And yet, the modern mind has been seduced into believing the opposite. People wake up expecting ease. They expect softness. They expect relief before they've fought, before they've suffered, before they've earned it. It's a dangerous delusion. The more you feed yourself unearned comfort, the weaker you become, the mind softens. The body follows, and soon the person you could have become is buried beneath a life spent indulging, without ever earning. The discipline, don't live this way. It's the trophy, the victory lap, the flag planted after the battle is over. It's not the fuel, it's not the baseline, it's not the escape. When you flip that order, when you make comfort something you demand before effort, you collapse the very structure of discipline. You invert the formula of growth, trading your future for the fragile pleasure of right now. The mind is always listening. Every time you choose comfort before effort, you teach it something corrosive. You teach it that rewards are handed out for existing, not for execution, that dopamine belongs to you, whether or not you've bled for it. And once that belief takes hold, it spreads like rust, like decay. The mind starts seeking shortcuts. The body starts resisting hardship. The work becomes heavier, the resistance stronger, the hill steeper. Not because you aren't capable, but because you've drained yourself of the fuel that only earned rewards provide. But flip it, and everything changes. You decide, no comfort, no softness, no reward until the work is done. The workout gets finished. The hard conversation gets had. The task gets executed. Only then does the mind open the gates to relief. And because it was earned, the rest tastes different. The relaxation feels different. It lands heavier, sharper, more satisfying. It doesn't feel like an escape. It feels like a victory. And that difference changes everything. This is how disciplined minds dominate the long game. They wire themselves to crave the right thing. Not the escape, not the shortcut, not the immediate pleasure, but the satisfaction that only comes after the grind. The confidence that only comes from knowing. Truly knowing that the work was done, the standard was met, and weakness was defeated again and again and again. People will call it extreme. They'll say you're too rigid, too hard on yourself. Let them, they don't understand. They don't understand that this is freedom. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from the low-grade anxiety that haunts those who constantly indulge without paying the price. Freedom from the quiet voice that whispers you didn't earn this. Because when you earn it, truly earn it, there is no guilt, only peace, only pride, only the clean satisfaction of a warrior who did what needed to be done. Comfort is a weapon when used properly, but it's a trap when given prematurely. When you start every day with the question, what have I earned rather than what do I feel like the entire fabric of? Your life shifts. The moments of rest become sharper. The food tastes better. The air feels different because it's been paid for in discipline, in effort, in the currency of self-respect. This is how the mind becomes iron. This is how the body follows. You deny softness until the grind is finished. You delay gratification until the mission is complete, and then and only then you take the comfort, not as a thief stealing what hasn't been earned, but as a victor claiming what's rightfully his. The world around you won't understand this. They've been programmed for the comfort-first lifestyle. They've been told that self-care means indulgence without effort, that rest is a right rather than a privilege. And so they live in a cycle of confusion, resting without being tired, rewarding themselves without having one, wondering why the satisfaction never lasts, why the emptiness creeps back in the moment the pleasure fades. But you won't live like that. Not anymore. You choose the hard way, the right way. The way that says nothing pleasurable comes without pain first, that nothing is deserved until discipline has been displayed. That softness only feels good when it's balanced against the sharpness of sacrifice. And every time you make that choice, you pull further away from the gravity of mediocrity. You become harder, sharper, stronger, more capable than the version of yourself who once believed that comfort could be the baseline. This is the truth most will never swallow. Comfort means nothing until it's earned. The bed feels softer when you've bled for it. The meal tastes richer when it follows suffering. The rest feels sacred when it's the prize, not the avoidance. When you live by this, you live untouchable because the world cannot seduce a person who understands that comfort without. Conquest is poison, but comfort after battle, that is fuel, that is power. That is the reward of the unstoppable. This isn't theory, this isn't motivation, this is the blueprint for becoming the person who moves. Every day, every moment without negotiation, no more waiting, no more overthinking, no more letting comfort and resistance steal your potential. You now understand the truth. Action builds momentum. Action creates confidence, and action is the cure for everything. From this point forward, you don't rely on motivation, you don't wait to feel ready, you move relentlessly. Because that's who you are now.